and welcome to Intellihelp SALON. I'm here today with my friend JJ Virgin, and I'll tell you a little bit more and have her tell a little bit more about herself in a minute. We've known each other about 15 years. I think Daniel Amen introduced us when we were working on a anxiety and depression program a number of years ago. And we run into each other at conferences frequently, and often we're speaking, but we're awfully...
Well, we used to.
Pre-COVID. Bounce into each other off stage, but then when someone else is on, you often don't get to hear them because you're in a green room waiting and anticipating your what you're going to say. And we end up having casual meals and things like that by swimming pools at hotels sometimes. But first of all, thank you for taking the time out to share yourself and your knowledge with the 100,000 people that are in this audience, and many of them live. So we appreciate that.
Fun. My pleasure.
Well, let's start off with the tough stuff. Like we do with everybody, who are 3 people, living or dead, that walked the earth that you strongly admire?
Okay. Gosh. Okay. Well, the first one's easy. The first one is Mary Morrissey. And Mary, do you know Mary? Oh my gosh. So Mary is one of my closest friends. And whenever something comes up in life, in fact, I've got to talk to her about something right away. She's the person I go and turn to. She owned the largest non-denominational church in the country. And then her husband, unbeknownst to her, embezzled $10 million. And she became the prophet for profit, like badmouthed everywhere, lost everything. And in her 50s, rebuilt her entire career. And now has this amazing dream builder program and helps people really through the law of attraction and positive thinking, create the life they love. So, what an amazing turnaround story. And it's like, it is the, what would Mary do whenever anything comes up? I'm like, oh my gosh, I don't know.
I'm guessing that she's one husband less at the moment.
She's that husband less, but she has the most amazing husband now. And the 4 of us spend a ton of time together. We actually went to Israel 2 years ago. Hoping we're going to go to Bali next year. So they're a great couple that I just adore.
Okay, let's go backwards before we go forwards. What are 3 character traits about her that made her come to the top of your mind? 3 things about her that made you go, she's got this character trait, that, and made her come up in first place.
Massive abundance-minded, super high integrity, and going along with abundance is high generosity. I would say those are 3 big things with her.
Perfect. Who's the next person that came to mind?
The next one's my husband. Okay. Oh my gosh. What an amazing soul he is. He is clearly an evolved soul. So my husband, let's see, what I would say about my husband is, and I remember when I first met him, and one of my girlfriends was like, do you know who that is? Do you think you can handle that? And he goes, I got this, of course. And I remember it was our first date, and totally as a joke, Ron, I'm looking at him, and he's a super good looking guy. And I said, so have you always been this good looking? Now, if you ask most people, they're going to hem and haw and get embarrassed and tell you no, and right. And he goes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, whoa.
Well, if you had to say it out loud, right? That's fantastic. So I bet confidence is on that list.
Right. So I was like, I don't even know what to say about it. There's a huge difference, but it's a little line between confidence and arrogance. And boy, when you cross that line to arrogance, it's ick. And he is confident and never arrogant. He is solid and steady, super grounded. I can fly off somewhere. And he's and not judgmental.
I think I know where that line is. Where do you think that line is between confidence and arrogance? It's a question that comes up a lot.
Gosh, I don't know how to define that, Ron. You just know it when you see it.
I have an archetype that I look to for that, and it's Muhammad Ali. For years, people thought he was arrogant, and then he delivered. Confidence can deliver. Arrogance can't.
That is really
Confidence
good.
Can deliver. It's a fair state of being that delivers. Arrogance is a false state of being that can't deliver. It's hoping you believe that I am this. And that's just my definition, but that's interesting. Oh, your third person. Who's your third person?
My third person is another one of my best friends. Well, gosh, there's a couple I'd love to say here. I've got to say Lisa Nichols, who's gotten to be a really close friend over the last couple of years. She is, I think, the best speaker you will ever find on the planet. Have you ever heard her speak?
What drives her to be when you say that she's the best speaker? Back to character traits. What makes you go? What kind of person becomes the best speaker?
She is so present. So she has that ability to be present and massively vulnerable, so much so that it makes everybody in the room feel safe and connected. So her ability to be vulnerable is incredible. Her ability to connect is like nothing I've ever seen before. And then her ability to see a bigger vision for yourself, for other people is incredible. So,
so there's three things there, and those are all strong, but I wouldn't necessarily connect one of those to powerful speaker. She's got to have some other mechanism that takes that and bundles it and lets it out.
I got to tell you, the ability to tell a vulnerable story is definitely a powerful speaker. And it was interesting. We were in a small workshop after Transformation Leadership Council. It was 16 of us. It was Vishen Lakhiani, Jack Canfield, Marcy Shimoff, just this Dawson Church, whole group of people. And she was teaching us her methods of how she speaks, which you kind of look and go, I could never speak like her. Then you learn that actually she's got some duplicatable processes that you can lay your own personality on. And Jack Canfield said, gosh, you've really done your work. To be a super vulnerable speaker, to be able to go into those valleys, you have had to do your work. Most people's ego will never let them go there, right? It's going to protect them.
The great speakers are taking the shell off, not putting the shell on. We're going to have Jack on. Actually, I'm going to talk to Jack tomorrow. So that's a thing.
Oh, he just spoke at our Ask Him About JFC, by the way.
Okay.
And ask him about the little plaque on his desk. That came out of that speaking workshop, but he just spoke at our Health Business Growth Conference and was, I wanted to show people the perfect embodiment of sustainable success, of someone who continues to stay inspired, to keep pushing the envelope, to keep innovating when they don't, like, God knows he doesn't need to, that just has such a big higher purpose and is so mission driven. So he did that for us, and it was absolute perfection.
Well, you made the perfect segue for us about being mission driven, because the segue I wanted to make that you just made for me was you and your career. And there'll be folks here that, and as you know, when I asked you to come on, part of this is people that are familiar with you, and a lot of it's people that have never heard of you. And that's part of the goal of this kind of salon style podcast, is to overlap audiences from people and really introduce folks. So from the get-go, kind of give folks your background a little bit, but tell us also at the same time the problem that you saw in the world that you sought out to either soothe or correct or address.
All right. Early on, like in my teens and 20s, I was focused on fitness. And back then, Ron, fitness was not fitness now, right? I was working out in the gym with the football players because that was the only place you go to the gym. And I was teaching calisthenics because there wasn't anything else. And although I will tell you in my 20s, I did rock those leg warmers big time in the leotards. Big time.
Thanks to Jamie Lee Curtis's influence.
Yep. Oh yeah. She paved the way, man. Thank you, Jamie. So then I became a personal trainer. It was me, Body by Jake and Mark Sisson, mainly because someone asked me to come to their house and help them work out at home. And that became personal training. And I literally would bring with me like a bench people could step up and down with. I was using surgical tubes, except no one, back then there wasn't any of this stuff. So I'm dragging this stuff, using my own body as resistance, pushing against people. And at the time I was in graduate school in biomechanics, and I kept being asked nutrition questions. And literally they figured if I was in fitness, I must know this stuff. And I was reading Shape magazine. It was brand new, getting my nutrition advice, which was absolutely ridiculous. And at the time, in graduate school, they said, if someone wants to lose weight, you just have to create a caloric deficit of 500 calories a day and they'll lose a pound a week. Sounds perfectly logical, right? And I love logical stuff. I'm super left brain. I'm like, okay, this is easy. So I just created an exercise and diet program that created a 500 calorie deficit. And at the end of the week, guess what I discovered? That didn't happen. And so I thought, well, these people are cheaters and liars,
Yeah, probably a few more factors involved in that. But
yeah, well, at the time I'm like, this is so crazy. They're paying all this money to me and cheating. Fortunately, I got to take a group of people to Hope Ranch in Santa Barbara. One of the gals had a ranch and I was there with them, managing their calories, managing their exercise so that it would obviously then work, except it didn't work. And some people gained weight, some people lost weight, and some people stayed the same. And that's when I went, all right, your body's not a bank account. If it's not a bank account, what the heck's going on? And that changed everything in my career. And this might sound like, oh, big deal, but this was 25, 30 years ago. And back then saying this was like saying, how they said the earth is round, it's flat. I mean, it would be that crazy bold of a statement to say, well, calories count, where they come from counts more, and your body's not a bank account, it's chemistry lab. So if you lose weight, you got to look at like artificial sweetener, all this stuff. So I changed everything. I changed the way I prescribed exercise, diet, everything else. And that was my big mission and purpose back then, was to get that message out, Ron, to a million people.
Was there anything, we're approximately the same age. I'm a little bit older, but I recall back in that day for me, I got into movies because I wanted to be an actor and I thought I wanted to be famous. And then I found out I didn't want to have anything to do with that. Was there anything, because we get older and we mature and we learn stuff. Was there anything around this that started with with vanity to some degree, or was it, I need to share this with other people, or where was that transition where you put the other people first suddenly? And I mean, honestly, if it's business, that's, if it was a way to make a living and then it turned into what it's turned in for you, because I know where it is, I know where it's ended up. Did it really start there or did it progress?
Well, I think where it all started was I wanted to be a stage actress. I was in high school going to San Francisco American Conservatory Theater and going and teaching dance class because I ran out of places to learn. So I thought I was going to be a musical theater actress. So that's where I first got interested in weight and all of that. But then I go off to UCLA and the theater department sucks. It's like everyone talks about they're going to become a waitress. And I'm like, why am I going to college to become a waitress at this restaurant they called Ships, which had toasters on the table? I'm like, I'm not going to go do that. And literally people were becoming waiters and waitresses. So I was like, forget it. I got out of that and started getting very into fitness. And my first big driver, Ron, like my first big purpose with all of this was do not get a job. Like, do not get a job. Don't call home. So, by the time I graduated from UCLA, I went to UCLA on a full ride scholarship. And by the time I graduated, for theater, but they let it be for anything. So I had a full ride scholarship, academic scholarship for whatever.
So kind of liberal arts, then go. And after I left, pick your own adventure. Right.
Yeah. So after theater was a no-go, literally I was like, what the heck am I going to do? And I was in an English class and the professor insulted me. And I thought, well, I'll show him, and to this day, I hate writing, like hate it. However, I'm glad I became an English major because I learned a few things. So that helped along the way. It's funny how everything really is research and development, right? The acting classes, the dance classes, the English major, it all helped. But my favorite classes at UCLA were in the exercise. I did exercise science and nutrition, but I ran out of units and I had to graduate. So day after graduation, I started in grad school in biomechanics. But by the time I was graduating UCLA, I had a full-blown personal training business. People were paying me cash. So, I mean, I put myself through grad school, doctoral school, all of it, personal training. And I think my first big goal was like, everyone was gearing up as they were graduating from college. They were wearing suits and going on interviews and they were going to go sit in an office. And I thought that is like, I can't imagine that would be the worst thing
for your
ever.
Personality type, I can't imagine it.
Oh gosh, my mom was like, honey, aren't you going to get a job? And honestly, Ron, I've had one job since I graduated and it lasted 3 months and I got fired So I'm like, jobs are not jobs and me don't get
there's
along.
unemployed and there's unemployable.
Right. And, I won't fire myself. I mean, every once in a while I'm tempted. So that was really the first goal was, could I create a business that could sustain me? And then once I created that and saw the impact that I was having on people's lives, it was so cool. And I thought, all right, because I would go in, there were two competing interests that actually weren't competing. They were together. But the first thing was, how do I help more people? Like, I'm going to all these people's houses. I'm helping them. When I start to help them, I'm helping their family. That's nice, but that's limited. And the other one was, I got stuck income level wise. And I literally, I'd get up, I'd go to train people, then I'd run to school, then I'd go train people. And I'd worked 7 days a week. Wasn't like I could add any more work time. And I thought, how do I increase my income? Like, I got totally stuck. And this was in the 80s. So, I was stuck at 10 grand cash a month, but I was like, how do I get to 25 grand? That was like how do I get there? And the first thing that happened was I got asked to start speaking, and they told me they paid $1,000 a talk. And I'm thinking, bingo, that's like both things. I get to talk to more people and I get paid more. Of course, I didn't know how to do it. Like, I'd never done a talk, but I feel sorry for the first group and the second and the third and the fourth. But
well, what was the critical learning thing because there's a place then where it transfers from, okay, I'm going to make money to, I'm making money, but I'm making money because I'm delivering value to this world, to this audience. So what was, in the context of your career, what was the discovery that you came to that went, hey, this is super valuable to other people, that they suddenly went, yes, this is valuable, give us more of that?
I am not totally sure I get that question. I can tell you where the big realization that I could get this message out to more people came from. Because, there was me personal training, and then there was me doing these talks, but I still hadn't really figured out, at the time. And I remember the corporate trainer who was using me in all these different talks kind of showed me what someone else was doing with like workbooks and all this stuff, but it didn't.
But you had to move from the 5,000 calorie deficit to some piece of information that you were like, oh, this is.
Yeah, I had to figure out how to start to add some leverage. And what happened that was really interesting was in the middle of all this, I left grad school. I went to University of Miami graduate school and I moved to Florida for a while. And at the time I had a client in Florida, and this client was a self-made multimillionaire. And we were walking down the beach, and I think I was 28 at the time. And she goes, what are you going to do after you graduate from grad school? Or first she said, why are you in grad school? And I go, oh, I want to help more people. She goes, okay. What are you going to do when you graduate? I said, I'm going to go get my PhD. Like, obvious, right? Now, this was a self-made multimillionaire who had a high school education and grew up in a trailer park. We're walking down the beach in front of her multi-million-dollar beach house that has beach on one side. It's got the Intercoastal on the other. She lives on something called Millionaire's Mile in Fort Lauderdale, Pompano, right? So we're walking down, like, I clearly, not paying attention to this. And she goes, that's interesting. She goes, you don't need to go to school to be more successful. And, I can show you how to make more money. And I was 28, Ron. So I'm like, this is not about the money, right? Had no family, had no things. So clearly, that righteous point, you think this is not about the money. As long as I have enough money to take care of myself, we're cool. And she goes, okay, well, when you turn 30, it probably will start to become about the money. And I'm happy to help you be successful in business if that ever is a thing. I'm like, just put that away in my head. I went back to California to go to USC for doctoral school. And I get this package on my 30th birthday from her, and it's Interior Design Nutritionals. It was Nu Skin's first foray into nutrition. They had FloJo was part of it.
Yeah, I was actually involved in Nu Skin way back then. Very familiar with it.
I was a diamond in Nu Skin because I watched that little video she sent me.
Craig Tillotson.
I took that videotape.
With Craig Tillotson and Sandy and that whole world.
Oh, I was
crazy.
Yep. Kay Smith was my mentor. And then Richard Call and Gary Campisi. So I watched this video. I still remember the video. I put the tape in my, my player, watching this video talking about trading time for money and how you need to create leverage and scale and how you can duplicate yourself. And the light bulbs went off. And I literally dropped out of my PhD program, put all my stuff in storage or gave it away, and drove to Florida. I'm thinking this poor woman must have been like, I didn't say to do this, and moved in with her.
Wow.
Yes. I am a quick start. I'm very impulsive. So, and I just realized it was like, oh, geez. I'd also gotten to a point, I was at USC getting this PhD in nutrition, exercise physiology with specializations in nutrition and aging. And I didn't have any more classes to take. Like I was taking classes in the dental school. I mean, right. I'd taken everything.
You're filling out your
requirements.
So
I was kind of like, this is just dumb. I've got 40 graduate and doctoral courses. I'm out of things to learn. This isn't changing any way that I can make an impact. Clearly, I need to learn something different. So I went in, moved in with her, and she's a huge mindset coach. She was known as like the mindset trainer in Nu Skin. And for 6 months, she coached me on mindset more than anything else. And that became like just how I started to live, all that law of attraction type of stuff. That was all her, all the stuff that she taught. So I was living, with Nightingale Conant tapes in my Walkman and doing that. And that changed everything. That was the big way that I changed. Because
what were the takeaways from that? Are there 2 or 3 things from going through that process where you went, hey, here's what I didn't know that now the light bulb's on for this, as far as whether it be law of attraction or any of that manifestation stuff for you?
Well, I think those things, number one, how powerful thoughts are, that thoughts create, is the thing that you can manage. I was going to say easily. You can't easily manage them, but you can manage your thoughts, and thoughts create. So, be careful what you think, right? So, and I remember she said a couple things, and when she first started to tell me this stuff, I thought, that is no way could that be. She said, there is no right or wrong. There just is. I'm like, of course there's right or wrong. Right. And then she'd say the only limitations are the limitations in your mind. I'm like, well, but of course there are limitations, So, I mean, it was such a mind stretch for me. And so all of that just became what I just focused on and learned that. But I think the bigger thing is looking at how you can duplicate yourself, either through doing it through people, through tools, through technology, so I stopped looking at something where I could trade time for money. That became so abhorrent to me to do that, because it just doesn't make sense. Even if you're paid a lot.
Yeah.
Like, you're still stuck and trapped if you're trading time for money. So I always look at like anything I do, how can I take that hour to get it out to loads of people and then have it work for me? Not, how do I get paid a bunch for? And I think
this is really pragmatic advice for anybody. I'll give you my quick version of that. It was when I moved from the grocery industry to the infomercial world. The transition was actually pretty simple, because we had these kind of fancy grocery stores, and we were teaching cooking for folks. And oh, look at that! Who's that?
I know. Well, she was sitting over there, kind of grumpy. That's Daisy. Look at her.
She's cute.
I know, isn't she cute?
And in training an audience in a grocery store, how a grocery store makes more money is sells more expensive things with higher margins, but better food. And so my friends were launching the George Foreman Grill, and they saw this cooking space in the store where we were training the audience, and they said, hey, can we come in and shoot some before and after demos? And that's what actually launched my infomercial career, because I learned I could just take these cooking demonstrations, and I was good at making them, and transfer that knowledge and tape it, videotape it, and that would turn into a global phenomenon of an infomercial quite simply. And that's just leverage. Like a book writer is a storyteller, but they write the story down and the story gets replicated. They only have to do it one time, and it becomes an endless source of revenue for them. And most people have something in their life that they may not be aware of that they're probably good at or know, even if it's just their own story that could be written down or duplicated, or a sales process that could be duplicated. That I'll say the wealthiest people that I know are, and some of them will be on this program at some point, are not the most brilliant people, and they'll admit to that, is they're the most highly leveraged people. So they've actually taken something, because the audience of the world isn't the most brilliant people, average people. The world's full of average people. So you have to be able to bring something to average people, and that's usually a pretty average thing that does something useful, but it's not record shattering or genius.
You know what's so funny? So when I wrote the Virgin Diet, it all came out of me teaching. I was teaching at the time. I was teaching doctors how to use a food sensitivity test in their office. And so I was looking at all these food sensitivity tests. I was running them on my own clients. I was like, the same foods kept showing up. And I looked at the typical elimination diet that had been used for decades, and it was very complicated. And I'm like, why are we doing that when you look at food sensitivity testing, it's typically only these foods, not all this stuff. I'm just made it simple. So I simplify this whole thing. I make it so simple, literally, a fifth grader could teach someone, which is kind of, to me, the litmus test. When I was on Dr. Phil, he always was like, speak to the fifth grader. I'm okay. Right. One of the first things Kay Smith made me do was give a talk without using, any 3-syllable words. I could only use 1- and 2-syllable words. I was like, perfect. So, but one of the criticisms I got of the Virgin Diet, one of the things I see in the health space is that healthcare practitioners complicate the heck out of everything. And all I did was take a complicated elimination diet, simplify it, make it easy to put into practice so that anyone could do it and have results. And then I got criticized for that. And I'm like, that's like, oh, this is too easy. I go, that's the point.
Well, yeah. And you know what?
Right.
I think getting criticized is absolutely fine. I get criticized all the time, and I'm solid with it. And I think that frustrates the people that are critics. And I really don't care. But speaking to the Virgin Diet, if you don't mind sharing just the general principles of that, because it is simple, if you wouldn't mind sharing that and giving folks an idea of what that means and how simple it can be.
Oh my gosh, it's so simple. And honestly, we all have, I think we all have like a bestseller or a program. It's something we're doing all the time. We just disregarded it because it was so easy. It's like that thing that's so easy for you. That's your thing. You think you have to struggle. It has to be super hard. No, it's the easy thing that comes easy to you. That's your thing. Do that thing. So for me, I was using this food sensitivity test. I noticed the same foods kept showing up. And there was another test to look at gluten, but it was like gluten, dairy, eggs, soy, corn, peanuts. And then ultimately, when I did that with people and pulled those foods out, they got crazy. They came in complaining about, skin problems and joint pain and headaches and fatigue, and all those things would go away within a week. But then they also started losing weight quickly. Like the average was 7 pounds in a week. But the first part of the diet, now it's dropped 7 foods. At first it was dropped 6. But I discovered that when I didn't pull out sugar, which isn't an immune reaction, was different, that they were eating more sugar. I'm like, oh my gosh. And I didn't think about it because I don't have a sweet tooth. So like, it would never have dawned on me if you pulled those 6 foods out to go eat sugar. So then it became 7 foods, pulling out the sugar, and really simple. Like I'm actually doing the Virgin Diet 2.0 for the 10th year anniversary next year. And we're simplifying it more.
But sugar is the food cocaine. Sugar really is the cocaine of foods.
Oh, I had to write a book just on sugar because after I wrote Virgin Diet, people were like, yeah, but I can't give up sugar. I'm like, okay, you have to. Like, if you want to do one thing that was going to diet wise, because one of the fastest ways to change your health is by what's on the end of your fork or the end of your straw. Yep. And sugar and artificial sweeteners, first of all, should be illegal. Like, there's nothing good about them. I cannot believe, you consider some of the stuff that gets passed through, but it's like, it's toxic.
Well, yeah, when you consider that the purpose chemically of an artificial sweetener is to trick the brain. That right there should be an indicator to you that you probably not should probably not be putting something in your body.
Don't do that
synthetically. And its sole mission is to trick the brain.
Yeah. Yes. So anyway, I had to write a book just on that because so many people, I was like, sugar is the single biggest thing in diet that's taking down our health. And it's worse. I think it was something like 75% of the population gained 16 pounds or more over this past pandemic year, like something insane.
Yeah. And it's easy to see why. I mean, the stress that this added to people, how just the disruption of schedule creates stress. Then now you're trapped at home, and everybody's first inclination is to turn on the internet or turn on the television. That's not going to lower your stress. That's only going to dial it up. And like everything,
right.
And an election year in a really contentious political environment, like everything is turning the dial up for everybody. And we want to feel loved and complete and safe. And so we start. I'm not any different than the average bear. I did too. And I've been having to go out. Like I started 8 weeks ago walking 5 miles a day again. I went, I don't care what's going on in the world. I'm of no good to anybody else unless I can get myself under control. And so I really had to make a huge effort. It's been worth it, but good Lord. So moving forward for you in this year, we're still in the middle of it. How do you, on a day-to-day in your family, your household, how do you guys cope with the current stresses of the world? And how do you incorporate good lifestyle choices? And what are those good lifestyle choices for you guys as far as food and entertainment and keeping your mental health? How's that work at your house?
So I've discovered, when the pandemic hit, I was traveling 70% of the time. And I will tell you what I've discovered is that I don't really miss traveling. Like, I'll probably, after when this is all over with, travel about 30% of the time. I'm never going back to 70% of the time. I'm building a huge studio upstairs. And that's that. But when the pandemic hit, I think that the big dividing line for people was, can you cook or not? And the things that we had at our house. So I felt super fortunate. I moved to Florida and I live on a canal. I have paddle boards and kayaks. I have a TRX hanging from the tree. I have a full gym, Stairmaster, Peloton, free weights, cable, sauna. So to be honest, and I wasn't saying anything about this because I go, gosh, the majority of people are stuck. He was reading about people stuck in an 800 square foot apartment with 2 kids in a big lab and, 2 adults. Right. So, but here's the thing, when you look at this, all of this comes down to a decision. Because even if I'd been stuck in that 800 square foot apartment, you still could have had, a TRX machine and you've got the stairwell. And when I get stuck in places, I'll go work out. I'll run up and down the stairwell. You figure out how to do it. You ask, how can I make sure that I'm staying healthy? So when this whole thing first hit, we got massive amounts of supplements. We had IV vitamin C at the ready. My husband's a prepper beyond belief. So we had every type of frozen protein, like Butcher Box and Vital Choice, grass-fed, pastured, wild stuff, and loads of great stuff for the pantry. And, we're still doing the same thing. We've always eaten healthy. Nothing changed. We're still eating healthy. We've always made it a point to move every single day. So we're still moving every single day. We always take our supplements. I'm better, like sleep-wise. I just stopped setting an alarm in the morning, which is fabulous.
We've got
wake
lots
up
of
around.
Similar
right.
here.
That's been great.
Yeah, we have a couple of our boys still live with us, and they go to the gym. But when this first started, they had a couple of 5-gallon painter's buckets in the garage that they filled with sand, their stair stepper.
Yeah, perfect.
And like the inflatable yoga ball. And they were doing all of these manual exercises. And I would go out and walk on the street and, turn the world into my gym. And I actually put my headphones on and turn nothing on. So I'm just listening to my heartbeat to maintain my sanity. So it doesn't take a lot. And I think that's one of the other things is to be healthy and to eat healthy. We always say that the more packages that are around your food, the more dangerous your food is. So when we first started Intellihelp, for instance, we got a lot of requests for things like Lunchables, which I understand why people want to hand that to a kid. They rip it open and they snack on it. But then you realize, hey, the box has more nutritional value than the contents. And getting people to go, hey, we can have oatmeal, we can have rice, we can have beans, we can have these staples in the house, and we can cook again as a family because we're not going out to fast food. And you can start to these steps to physical and mental health.
When you look at this, here's what's good about all of this. We lost one of the most important traditions, both for overall health and mental health, which is sitting down and having a family dinner. that had gone out out and away. Now my ex-husband and one son live within 30 minutes. My other son and my bonus daughter were here with us during the pandemic. They came over twice a week. We had family dinners every night. And then we would play, like, we got a pool table because we were like, all right. And we played games. We got like games. So I really felt like we'd gone back to the 50s, right? But I thought, gosh, like usually when your kids go off to college, you never get this opportunity again. And here we are making dinners together, playing games together, going out. We'd go out at sunset and paddleboard and kayak together. It was honestly amazing when you really
think about what was taken away, but what was given at the same time. And that's an important thing, is to maintain that gratitude too, and realize, oh, this is phenomenal. Again, you and I are from the same era. And when we grew up, if people had a television, that was something. If a family had cable, they probably had some money. Then the VCR came, and then fast forward into our kids' world, and it's shocking that we have 7 TVs in a house, and we have 5 cars, and we have people are immersed in all of this electronics. And I laugh. I often say that the culmination of technology is the collective of all human experience that endeavors to make sure there is no more collective human experience. And we just get separated with our technology. And this has been a nice moment to reset and go, hey, let's cook a meal and teach. Yeah. I saw a lot of folks online, moms and grandmas and dads teaching their kids how to cook and how to do things that I hadn't seen for an awfully long time.
Yeah. I mean, I think that was one of the greatest things, was to go, oh my gosh, people don't know how to cook. They don't. Now, fortunately, my kids love to cook, and they were coming over and making great meals. So yeah, I don't know. I looked at all of this, and yes, there's a lot of challenges, and I'm not going to discount any of that. But, I've gone through some major challenges in my life, nearly losing a son to a hit and run. I mean, some bad stuff. I just don't focus on what's wrong. I always focus on the possibility stuff. Because again, if you come to that point where you believe thoughts create, and you're focusing on what's bad, what's wrong, what's not going to work, that's what you get. So I just can't let myself ever go there.
Do you mind for a second just giving just a little insights around a couple of those stories? Because it's very easy for someone to look at you and go, she's had it dialed in from day one. She's, that rainbows must come out of the sky for her. But a lot of people don't know the story about your kid. I mean, you had a marriage that didn't work out. Some of those things. Just a little bit of the and I don't want to go down the Oprah hole, but I would like it to frame this around the reality that you've lived and how much you've overcome, because there has been some real moments of deficit in your life.
Yeah, and I think we all have those, but it's like you always look at the other person and go, oh, they've got it easy. So I'm an adopted kid. My parents were at University of Oregon. My dad wanted her to abort. She went to San Francisco, moved into a home for unwed mothers, gave me up. And my parents, who adopted me, couldn't have kids, really wanted kids. They adopted my older brother and me. My older brother is profoundly schizophrenic. As we were growing up, they kept saying, oh, he's shy. I'm like, I don't think so, Mom. I don't think this is shy. Dad was a functioning alcoholic. So that was, when you get raised in that, you're kind of like, you have no clue what normal is.
Yeah, that is your normal.
This is normal.
Yeah, that is your normal. That's your reality.
Right. So my normal is like, Dad has 5 or 8 cocktails every night and passes out after watching Little House on the Prairie. And, my brother's downstairs talking to in the Beautiful Mind, the war room. He's down there in the war room talking to everybody. And that's totally normal too. So literally I was like, I'm out of here as quickly as I can get out of here. Which is why I decided in high school, I'm going to get a scholarship so I can get out. So that was the driver for getting a scholarship to college. I got married right out of college. That was, I don't think those should even count, honestly.
The Mulligan marriage?
Yeah. I mean, my mom always told me, you go to college and then you get a degree and you get a good job with the corporation, and then you get married. And of course, then you quit that and your husband has a good job with the corporation with benefits. So anyway,
Right.
that I married a super corporate guy. Oh my gosh. He had gotten his MBA so he could work at a bank and get a good title and get, X amount of vacation days a year. I mean, you could, and I didn't understand what an entrepreneur was at the time. Like, I remember him like, why do you have to work on the weekends? And why, I didn't know who I was. And entrepreneurship wasn't a
Right.
thing, right?
No.
I mean, no one was like, so I didn't really figure all that out till my 40s when I finally found other weirdos like me. And I went, oh,
There's a lot
oh,
of
wow.
you.
Yeah, there's a lot of you. We're kind of cool, actually. We're not that weird. They're weird. So anyway, then I met I literally wrote a list of everything I wanted in a husband and met my husband with my kids the next day, and who's a super awesome guy, like amazing guy. He lives down the street. He's real close friends with my husband. Absolutely adore him. But when I did leave him, and it was funny, we just were working with a shaman who was explaining why we could never have lasted together. And I was like, I already know that. He tortured my life for 7 years. He sued me. He sent child protective services after me. And all along the same time, my dad's dying of cancer. And I find out that my ex hadn't paid the taxes he was supposed to pay. And my son gets diagnosed with bipolar. I'm like, that's going on. Anyway, we get divorced. Things all start to settle down. My son, who's had bipolar, who's had to go to these residential treatment centers, et cetera, is now settled down. Everything seems like, I've been on Dr. Phil for a couple of years. I got a big book advance for Virgin Diet. Everything's about to happen. Everything looks great. I'm like, finally, I remember, Ron, I was walking through the airport after going to Brendan Burchard's Experts Academy. He was coaching me to help me get Virgin Diet to be this big thing. I'd done a PBS show. I'd worked with Daniel Amen to help me with that. Everything is lined up. And, finally I have some money. I have some relief. My sons are doing great. I'm getting along with my ex. And I remember walking through the airport on a Sunday thinking, oh my gosh, like everything is perfect. Like life is wonderful. This is so amazing. And my other thought was, gosh, Brendan taught about having a hero's journey. I don't have a hero's journey.
Here it comes. Cue.
Then
cue Zeus and the lightning bolt.
Yeah, right. Yeah, never ask for a hero's journey, like never. And by the way, we all have some. They don't have to be as dramatic as mine. So next day, I'm literally recording videos with a team for my PBS special and my book launch. I come home. The book launch is starting 2 weeks from that day. The book is coming out 2 months from that day. I walk home. Grant's in a huge snit, storms out of the house and tells me he's going to go get hit by a car. But he said that so many times, Ron, I was like, okay, and so he storms out of the house. Now, I don't believe that Grant walked in front of the car, but I believe Grant manifested that. He said it enough times, thoughts create. And all I know is I'm in the garage working out, and my ex-husband and my son, Bryce, who was 15, Grant was 16, come storming in the house. They say, Grant's been hit by a car and airlifted to a local hospital. Now, thinking a couple things. Number one, it's like, I just knew, I felt like I knew, could see it all happening. And that when someone's hit by a car and they're airlifted, this is not good. If it's broken leg, they're driven. So we're driving there. They won't tell us anything. He's a John Doe. We get there. They usher us into a conference room, and they're questioning us. And I'm like, stop and tell me what's going on with my son. And that's when they told me that, he'd suffered multiple brain bleeds in his head. It's called diffuse axonal injuries. He's in the deepest coma that you could be in. And they couldn't, and he had this torn aorta that was going to rupture sometime in the next 24 hours if it wasn't repaired, but they couldn't repair it at that hospital because he needed specialized surgery because they had to do it without a blood thinner. They couldn't do it at that hospital. Along with the fact he had 13 fractures. He literally had bone sticking through his skin. He was literally half covered with road rash when I saw him, like blood, bone sticking through, glass shimmering, on a ventilator, tube coming out of his brain to manage the pressure. And the doctor's like, he's never going to survive the airlift to the next hospital. And even if he did, he wouldn't survive the surgery. And even if he did, he'd be so brain damaged, it wouldn't be worth it. And my son, Bryce, is looking at this doctor. Now, I have trained my kids, respect people, but question, right? Like there is no, and I work around doctors. John's whole family are doctors. John, my ex-husband, was a med mal trial attorney.
But at this moment, you're spinning at the height of emotion, and this is your firstborn child.
Yeah. And here's the thing, like this guy's giving me an opinion. My son, Bryce, is looking at this doctor, and my son, Bryce, says, well, it sounds like maybe there's a 0.25% chance he could make it. And the doctor says, yeah, that sounds about right. Like, obviously we're not going to go for that kid, because that's like a terrible odds. And Bryce says, we'll take those odds. It's not zero. So, and my ex-husband was a med mal trial attorney and said all the things that you'd want someone to say so that the doctor would then get in action. And guess what? Grant survived the airlift, and he survived the surgery. And, I remember after the surgery walking in, and the neurosurgeons were like, yeah, he survived the surgery, but we don't know if he'll ever wake up. And I just made a decision in that hospital room. I remember holding 2 fingers of Grant's, and Grant actually reacting to me, even though they said he never would. And I said, Grant, you're going to be 110%. And I just need you to fight. I can do all the rest. I'll like bring the cavalry. And Daniel Amen came, and I had a pile-on. I did everything. I pushed the limits. That hospital was not pleased with me. I was doing high dose fish oil behind their backs. We did essential oils. We did progesterone cream. We were doing acupressure. Like, we just did everything possible. As soon as he spit out his feeding tube, I brought in a NutriBullet blender, and then I loaded him up. It took 8 years, but Grant is better than before the accident. So that was, and during that time, I remember sitting in that hospital thinking, okay, so if this book doesn't go, I will be bankrupt. Like I don't have a plan B. I don't have anyone who will take care of me. I'm a single mom. I'm the sole financial support. My ex-husband wasn't practicing law. He was teaching tennis occasionally. I took care of everything and everybody, and no one was going to take care of me if anything happened. I didn't have a trust fund or anything like that. I had me. That's all I had. And I had no savings. I was living, Well,
all of this is proof that there is no plan B. There's a plan A. God's got it, and you got to follow it. Can you find it?
Yeah.
Can you find it? It's there for you. You just got to. Perseverance is probably, the reason I asked you those questions at the beginning of the people you admire is because I like to have folks describe themselves in a very covert way. And all of those.
Oh, that's so funny.
All those things that you said about all of the people in your life, those are you. You are all of those things.
I don't know. My husband, Tim, I being super steady and grounded.
Like attracts like, though. That's a result of a type of thinking, though. And there's perseverance attached to all of that. And you have a very perseverant, we are going to get through this nature about you. And I think that that's one of the things that makes you so attractive to millions of people, is that you're not in this for you, nor does it ever appear that you're in it for you. You are in it for them, and you simply are sharing your experience, and they get to latch on to that and go, oh yeah, you know what? I've got hope. And if I have hope, I can have perseverance. And if I have perseverance, I can get a result. And you do that for a lot of people, and selflessly.
Wow. Thank you so much.
No, I appreciate it. It's fun to watch.
It was very clear with Grant that, I wanted to name the movie Walking Hope, because I just thought, gosh, in this last year just showed it, like, you have to have hope. Just don't take someone's hope away. It drives me nuts when someone goes to a doctor and they go, oh, you have 6 weeks, and then the person dies 6 weeks later because you just told them and took their hope away. Just all we need right now more than ever is some hope. Like this, our future could be better than ever.
Yeah. And none of us are promised 6 days. So you have to just go,
or 6 minutes.
It's just, you have to look at the horizon and go and find joy in the moment. Like you mentioned, cooking with your family and things. Yeah. We're all locked in our house. You could make a misery out of that, or you could go, you know what? We're going to find a way to make this a plus, not a minus. And it's how we respond to things, because that's the only thing that we're in control of. I know one of the things and I'll talk to Jack about this as well tomorrow, is one of the things we talk about a lot with our peer group and our friends is the law of attraction. And I'm always kind of the counter to that. I'm always like, I believe in the law of attraction. I love the attraction part. You got to set those things out there for sure. You have to have intention, but you have to move. You have to take the traction, and you'll be rewarded. I was talking to somebody about this morning, and we were discussing like life being like God gives you this much yarn, and you knit, and then you make a mistake, and he pulls the yarn back from you. He's like, yep, fix that, fix this. That we don't do everything right, but the point isn't to do it right. Nobody does it perfectly. It's to keep doing it and to take actions that are useful for other folks selflessly and without disrespecting yourself at the same time. And I love watching you do that in the world. As we move forward in the next year or two in this, what is your best advice for folks that feel like they might be like at the moment, or like, you know what, I think I've had all I can take? Because we've all been at that. And there's a lot of people in the world that are like, they've lost their job. They're at home. They're short on money, and they feel the world closing in on them. How do you get someone to turn that inside out and provide them with some hope and some optimism and an action or two? Starting with movement, probably, and nutrition, because that's your expertise.
It's interesting. The minute you said that, I thought back to a time when I remember sitting by myself on a couch, and the only thing that I was thinking, I can't take this anymore. Like, I can't take one more minute of this, but I had kids. So I didn't have any other options. I had to. It's actually not movement, and it's not diet. It's something that I think we suck at that is the biggest game changer out there. And when my son was in the hospital, one of the first things that I did when I committed to him, he was going to be 110%. I was like, okay, I'm going to need a little help here. And prior to that, I would never ask for help. I hated asking for help. And this time I went big with that. I sent an email out to my entire email list. I posted it on Facebook, and I asked for help. I said, listen, I don't want your sympathy. I need your support. And I think when times are challenging, that's your time to ask for help. And conversely, look to see who you can lift up. I remember that. I remember times were really bad for me, and I had a girlfriend, and times were worse for her. And I reached my hand back and helped her up, and reaching my hand back to help her up helped me up. So, it's asking for help, and it's also giving help. I've been mentoring a guy in prison for the last couple of years. And I got to know his cousin, this gal in Arizona. And when COVID hit, she had her work hours cut back. And then I'd never heard of these paycheck loans. Have you ever heard of these things?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, these should be outlawed. Oh, yeah. So anyway, when I started talking to her, she was like asking me some entrepreneurial questions. And she said, I really want to start my own business. But she started talking to me, and she didn't share it right away. But as I started to learn more about her in this, I was like, oh, no. So I gave her a hand up and helped her with some mindset work, helped her with a little bit of getting out of that debt. And I think that we all can do this. Like, I will tell you that, getting help from other people helped me so much when Grant was around. What I was unexpected there in the asking for help was how good it made those people feel. But then when you think about how it makes you feel when you can help other people. So if you're feeling that way, find some people to reach out to. Jim Rohn's right when he talks about those 5 people. Get your 5 people, right?
I feel like you read the manifesto for Intellihelp. You didn't, did you?
I did not.
So, I started this with a group of people by accident. I started it, but then by Monday, started on a Saturday. By Monday, it was an accident, and a bunch of people joined me. But I am like that. I don't ask for help. I'm typically the person companies call or people call when they're launching something, and I'm the giver of help and the hired gun for that. But in this particular instance, I really became concerned with our country and how people would get food. But I realized at that moment, it was so critical with everybody locked in their house. There were people that could give, that wanted to do good in the world, and they were powerless. And half of the object of the game here was enrolling that, what we call angels, this army of angels at both sides, to one, ask and to give. And it became very evident that the psychology that you're talking about is blisteringly true. That once people started giving, they felt this amazing empowerment and relief of, oh my gosh, I can do something to make a difference in the world. While I feel like the world might be crumbling or burning, I can do something, and I can do something positive, and I can meet the person that I'm helping, and I can extend that hand to them. So, and I'm not sure I fully got that even when those words came out of my mouth a year ago. And then, but I spoke them, and people jumped in, and I, again, never asking for help. I did send out a link to 500 of my friends, and you being one of them, they jumped in and made connections for me. And this whole thing came to life where, now I think 3 million meals have been served peer to peer. We didn't do it. It's people helping people independently. And the power of giving and the power of being able to give that is immense. And we found a lot of people that were askers at one point in the network came back as givers later, and rapidly came back as givers. So,
it's so great. That gal I was telling you about, I sent her to Mary Morrissey's Dream Builder. And at that, she does a charity fundraiser. And this woman who's like, just getting back on her feet, found a little bit of money so that she could do that too. Like, I was like, okay, so cool.
Well, thank you for spending the time with me. I'm quite sure that the folks that listen to this and watch this will get a heck of a lot out of it. You are a pearl in a sea of shells, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate that you took the time, and I'm sure everybody else did as well. And if there's anything that I can do for you, please don't hesitate to call and ask me, because I'll do it.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Folks, you can talk to us later and see my conversation with Jack Canfield tomorrow. All right.